Hey guys, I'm here in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm at Godwin Cemetery and I did some research on an unsolved murder case. It's the unsolved murder of Oscar Chitwood, and I thought I would walk around the cemetery and film it and tell you guys the story. Alright, so I'm going to tell you guys the story of Oscar Chitwood. It is officially still an unsolved murder from here in Hot Springs back in 1910, and I thought the story was interesting, and I found his grave. So I thought we'd walk around and look at the cemetery and I'd tell you the story. So on August 17th, 1910, Sheriff Jake Haupt and his chief deputy Sid Haupt, who is also his younger brother, they got notice of a notice to be on the lookout for the Chitwood brothers, Oscar and George Chitwood. They are wanted for stealing horses. Just be on the lookout. They're horse thieves. We're looking for them. Just so happened that Oscar and George Chitwood were in Hot Springs that day. They were in a wagon train and they had stopped. So they think it was Sid and one of the deputies, Sid Haupt and one of the deputies went to talk to them and said, "Hey, the sheriff wants to talk to you. Do you care to come talk to him?" And surprisingly enough, they said yes. So the brothers followed them and they went into the courthouse with them. There, Jake served them with a warrant for their arrest. And that was when the fight broke out. Oscar and George attempted to escape and the shooting began. The shooting took place on the grounds of the Garland County Courthouse. So after the gunfight was over, George Chitwood was shot dead. Jake Haupt, the sheriff, he was mortally wounded, but still alive. Sid Haupt, his little brother, was unharmed, and Oscar had got away. 3 days later, on August 20th, Sheriff Jake Haupt dies from his gunshot wounds that were inflicted. Now, in the meantime, while Oscar's on the run, he's hurt. His left arm had been shot by a bullet, and it had splintered the bones in that arm. So while he was on the run, he was in pain. And it's said that he was waiting for his brother. So he kept going to different spots where he thought his brother would find him and waiting for him. And he wasn't aware that George had died. So ended up, he went to his homestead where his mom lived, and she was gone. And he couldn't find anybody, and he didn't know why. Well, it turned out his mom had been called into the Hot Springs courthouse, or wherever, Hot Springs, to go identify the body of George Chitwood. So that's where she was. So he did end up turning himself in. He was afraid, and everyone else was afraid he was going to be harmed by vigilantes before his trial could take place. So he was taken to a state prison in Little Rock. So all the witnesses who saw this gunfight testified that George, not Oscar, had fired the shot that had killed the sheriff, and that Oscar had just fired some warning shots into the air to keep the lawman at bay before he could escape. But the prosecutors argued that since Oscar had been involved just at all in the shootout, he was just as guilty as George for causing the sheriff to die. So he was charged with murder and he was held without bail. While in prison, Oscar is receiving treatment for a bullet wound that splintered in his left arm. A newspaper article stated that he stoutly denied that he and his brother George had stolen any horses, and that they were at their home when the officers came to serve warrants were not their own. He insisted further that he did not really go to Hot Springs to start trouble, and he had tried to dissuade his brother from his course. After visiting the sheriff's office, he said he mounted his horse and intended to leave town without any further trouble when the shooting commenced. So 3 months later, on December 7th, Oscar was transported back to Garland County for his trial. Oscar's lawyer then convinced the judge to move the trial to the neighboring Saline County so he would have a chance at a fair trial. So the judge granted this and agreed. And in the meantime, Jake Haupt's younger brother, Sid Haupt, had been named the new sheriff of Garland County. On December 26, 1910, Deputy John Rutherford reported that at about midnight, he was walking home by the courthouse and saw 5 suspicious characters. He was afraid Oscar would be mobbed, so he entered the jail to take Oscar to the city jail, which was closer to the train station, so that he could board the train and he could go back to Little Rock to await his new trial location in Saline County. His story goes, he entered the jail and told Oscar, "Get prepared to move. I'm taking you to the city jail." After taking him out, right when he was stepping through the jail door, which was located at the time in the courthouse, he said he was overpowered by 5 or more masked men, and Oscar was taken from him and shot to death. So at 2:30 a.m., I read a newspaper article, Oscar Chitwood's dead body was picked up from the stone steps on the opposite side of the courthouse from where earlier his shooting encounter with the law happened 3 months earlier. 3 bullets had been fired through him at close range. Oscar was still manacled with handcuffs when the coroner viewed his body half an hour later, and there were no traces of a mob. Newspapers repeated Rutherford's story and said the mob had lynched Oscar, which was not true. Rutherford's story didn't add up, as several witnesses who lived near the courthouse didn't see a mob and argued how could a large group of men murder someone like that and get away unseen. Prisoners in the jail stated they saw Rutherford and another deputy, Ben Murray, murder Oscar as he yelled, "For God's sake, don't kill me, let me stand trial." Rutherford's story didn't add up, as I said, but Rutherford and Murray were charged with the murder of Oscar Chitwood. Sheriff Sid Haupt was ordered to take both men without bond until trial, and it was later found that Sheriff Haupt did not hold the men and that he allowed them to live at home while they were awaiting the trial. So because of this, Sheriff Haupt was later indicted for the crime of escape, and he was also convicted of corruption charges, saying he protected illegal gambling operations in Garland County. So Rutherford's murder trial started May 22nd, 1911. The prosecution stated Rutherford killed Oscar on behalf of the Haupt family. Rutherford's lawyer countered he was innocent, and the county was only prosecuting Rutherford to further damage Sid Haupt's reputation. On May 31st, 1911, not that long after the trial started, Rutherford was found not guilty by the jury. Murray had all charges dropped. Sheriff Sid Haupt was found guilty of corruption, and he was removed from office, but he was not charged with the murder of Oscar Chitwood. So, Oscar's murder, like I said, still technically remains unsolved to this day. We're on our anniversary trip, and after this, we are going to go check out the courthouse because they said it is still standing and in use for offices to this day. All right. I apologize about this video because honestly, it's the first one I've done like this, and I am a little nervous. You can probably tell from my voice. But I really enjoy looking up stuff like this anyways and visiting cemeteries like this anyways. So, and I figured it would tie in good with Headstone history. All right, so let's go see the grave of Oscar Chitwood. Felt like I was teasing you guys. I don't know. All right, and here it is. So here he is, Oscar Chitwood, 1881 to 1910. Yeah, his headstone is just, you know, it's a normal one. I don't feel like it would catch anybody's eye. Like if you're walking around here looking for cool old stones, you know, there's some really neat ones here. I feel like his is one you would probably just pass on by, and it has so much cool history with it. It's so neat. But there's Oscar's, and then he's buried right next to his brother George, and George was the one that was killed on the courthouse grounds, like in the first initial shootout. George Chitwood, 1889 to 1910. He's buried here with his wife Martha, 1890 to 1908. So she died 2 years before George did, and I think it said she was 17 or 18 years old. Another quick interesting fact, Martha's maiden name is Godwin, and we're here in Godwin Cemetery. And she is right next to her parents, Finley and Sarah Jane Godwin. Finley was born in 1835 and died in 1922, and Sarah Jane was born in 1850 and died in 1905. Wow, they had a 15-year age difference in their marriage. But anyways, another interesting fact, Finley here, he said on his find a grave, he was like a pioneer of this area we're in, Garland County and Hot Springs. Like he was an early pioneer, and his father made the first baseball park on his land, and it was like the first baseball park in the area where anybody could go play baseball and practice on it, the first ball field. So I thought that was really interesting. So that was the story of Oscar Chitwood. I hope you liked it. Thanks for coming along with me, but we're gonna head on into Hot Springs and go check into our hotel and relax. We had a long 5-hour drive and we're tired. Thanks so much, and please like and subscribe.